So it is mid-January, and here in Spain, well at least where I live in the interior of the province of Castellón, it's one of those days today where it's foggy and super cold, and as you know when the temperatures drop, there's nothing better than a dish that really warms your soul. Anyways, today that's exactly what we're going to do. We're making a regional Spanish chickpea stew. This dish hails from the beautiful region of Madrid, where it's known as un potaje de garbanzos a la madrileña. Now the beauty of this recipe is the thickener we're going to make and add into the stew, as it gives the dish the most incredible textures and flavors. Folks, this recipe is very easy to make. As always, it's made with the simplest everyday ingredients and it comes together in about 40 minutes. Let's begin by cutting one large onion into large chunks. And we'll cut one large carrot in half lengthwise and then into 1-inch pieces, which is 2.5 centimeters. You don't have to peel the carrot, but just make sure that it's washed. Then we'll add in the vegetables into a stock pot. And we'll add in 4 cups of cold water, which is a little under 1 liter. Then we'll season generously with sea salt. Add in 1 bay leaf and heat it with a high heat. In the meantime, I'm going to add in 2 eggs into a saucepan and then add in some cold water, just enough to barely cover the eggs. What we're doing here is making some hard-boiled eggs that we're going to use as garnish for the stew. You can easily veganize this recipe by skipping this step. And we'll heat it with a high heat. Once the water comes to a boil, I'm going to place a lid on the saucepan and we'll turn off the heat and let this sit here for exactly 12 minutes to end up with perfectly hard-boiled eggs. Alright, let's move back to the stock pot. It's been exactly 20 minutes since we turned it on and all those vegetables should be perfectly tender. I'm going to remove the stock pot from the heat and we'll drain the vegetables into a sieve with a bowl underneath, and we're going to set the vegetables aside. That way they can slightly cool off, and make sure to reserve that water that we cooked the vegetables in, as we're going to be using this later on as the broth for our stew. In the meantime, let's get the rest of the ingredients ready. I'm going to finely chop half of an onion, roughly chop 4 cloves of garlic, finely grate between 3 to 4 tomatoes to end up with 1 cup of tomato sauce, which is 225 grams. As always, you can substitute this for either canned tomato sauce or even passata. And we'll grab 1 jar of cooked chickpeas, which is the same thing as the canned ones, drain it into a colander. And we'll rinse the chickpeas under some cold running water. Now the size of the jar that I'm using is 570 grams, which becomes 400 grams once it's drained, or 2.5 cups of cooked chickpeas. For the next step, I'm going to heat the same stock pot with a medium heat and add in 2 tablespoons of extra virgin olive oil, which is 30 milliliters. After heating the olive oil for about 1 minute, I'm going to add in the finely chopped onion and the roughly chopped garlic. And start mixing the garlic and onion around with the olive oil. As you know, I always like to mix this continuously, that way the veggies don't brown too quickly and they all evenly saute. After about 3 minutes, and the onions are nice and translucent, and the garlic lightly sauteed, I'm going to add in the 1 cup of tomato sauce, which once again is 225 grams. And we'll give it a quick mix and simmer it for a couple minutes. In the meantime, let's move back to the vegetables that we boiled earlier. I'm going to remove the bay leaf from the vegetables and transfer them into a tall plastic cylinder. For this step, you can also use a food processor. Then I'm going to grab a 1/4 cup of our rinsed chickpeas, which is about 20 grams, and add them into the cylinder with the vegetables. And add in a couple tablespoons of the reserved broth, which is about 30 milliliters. And using a handheld mixer, I'm going to blend the ingredients together until we end up with a smooth puree with no lumps in it. Alright, let's move back to the stock pot. That tomato sauce has been simmering between 3 to 4 minutes, and as you can see, it's slightly thickened up. For the next step, I'm going to add in the remainder of the chickpeas that we rinsed, along with our vegetable puree, and we'll season everything with sea salt and a generous portion of freshly cracked black pepper. And we'll give this a gentle mix, that way all the ingredients are evenly mixed together. Then I'm going to measure out 2 cups of the reserve broth that we cooked the vegetables in earlier, which is 475 milliliters, and add it into the stock pot. We'll also pinch in a 1/4 teaspoon of saffron threads, which is 0.17 grams. You'll find a link where you can get the saffron threads I'm using from Golden Saffron in the description box below. And we'll give this one final mix, that way all the ingredients are evenly mixed together. And we'll turn up the heat from a medium heat to a high heat. Once the broth comes to a boil, I'm going to place a lid on the stock pot and lower the fire to a low-medium heat. And we're going to simmer this for about 10 minutes. This is enough time for all the flavors to come together and for that stew to really thicken up. After about 10 minutes, I'm going to remove the lid from the stock pot. And as you can see, this stew has really thickened up thanks to that vegetable puree. For the last step, I'm going to add in 2 cups of tightly packed fresh spinach, which is about 100 grams. And we'll mix the spinach around, that way it easily wilts and it incorporates into the stew. Now the spinach that I'm using, as always, is fresh bagged spinach. As you know, I love this stuff because it's inexpensive, pre-cleaned and pre-cut, but to make this recipe, you can also use frozen spinach. Once the spinach is fully wilted, this stew is ready to go. I'm going to remove the stock pot from the heat and transfer some of the stew into a shallow bowl. For the final step, I'm going to cut the hard-boiled eggs that we cooked earlier, each one into 4 evenly sized quarters. And we'll add some of the hard-boiled eggs over the stew. Check it out, our potaje de garbanzos a la madrileña are done. A beautiful Spanish chickpea stew from the region of Madrid. Easy to make, beautiful presentation, but the beauty of this recipe is that thickener that we added in there. Let's give this a try and see how it turned out. Now this is a dish that I cannot wait to try. You all know how much I love chickpeas. Here we go. I need one more bite. I'm telling you, it instantly just warms your soul, and the flavors are absolutely beautiful. You know, here on Spain on a Fork, we have done a ton of different chickpea stews because there's a lot of different regional versions here in Spain. But this one right here really hits home. Enjoy this on a cold winter's day or any time of the year, as it's going to fill your body with so much goodness. Really quick before I go, a shout out to a couple of my patrons: Tommy Williams, Clarence Bolin, Martin Giddings, Aravinda Garimea, Robert Manahan, and Tamara Johnson. Again, guys, thank you so much for being patrons of Spain on a Fork. You know how much I appreciate you. For the rest of you, if you're not with me on Patreon and you'd like to support Spain on a Fork, you'll find my Patreon link in the description box below and iCard above. If you enjoyed today's video, hit that like button, leave me a comment below, and don't forget to share this video with your family and friends. That way our Spain on a Fork community can continue to grow. Till the next time, hasta luego.